Hello everyone, it's Jess Conto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And after back-to-back Best Picture nominees from John Ford, we're on to Tobacco Road, which is the hillbilly elegy of 1941. And joining me for this episode is my wife, Jess. Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome, Shane.
How excited were you to talk about these hillbillies?
It's funny you draw that parallel to Hillbilly Elegy, because I also feel like this movie was pretty patronizing to the people.
Well, we will certainly get to that as we get into the film, but for those who haven't tuned into the show before, we have 3 segments. We have coming attractions for this coming weekend, which is April 12th. And then we'll talk about our feature film, Tobacco Road, and then get into some recommendations for you. Now, for this weekend, the biggest film coming out is Civil War from Alex Garland. I'm a huge Alex Garland fan. I'm not a huge fan of making a film like this in the current political climate in America, so I have some feelings. But, Jess, what are you most excited about?
I am most excited for Sasquatch Sunset. It's got cryptid, it's got 824. I'm a simple man with simple...
Well, I would gotta just say it's from Bleecker Street. But it does have cryptids. It's indeed about a family of Sasquatch just living their Sasquatch lives.
That's pretty funny. I got those two mixed up.
And Jesse Eisenberg is a Sasquatch, which is the least believable thing that I could think about. If I had to cast literally anybody to be a Sasquatch, he would be the last person. But it definitely goes with the tone that this film's going for, that, it's just a normal family of Sasquatch doing their Sasquatch thing.
Just humping in the wild.
Humping in the woods. That is indeed how this trailer really sets the tone.
Just slapping hairy meat. I love it.
I am very excited about this film because it just seems so weird, and I'm down for that. So this was like a festival darling, of course, based off of who's in it, and I guess just the overall premise of such a crazy idea. They had to do it. The one that I'm going to pick is Arcadian, which is a new Shudder horror film starring Nicolas Cage, where him and his 2 sons are surviving in a post-apocalyptic world where giant monsters attack, and they're trying to stay alive. And, from some of the early reactions, these are some of the most wild monsters that you'll ever see in a movie, and I am down for that. And also, it has Nick Cage in it, and it looks like it's Nick Cage trying to give a powerful, intense performance.
Like Mandy?
Potentially, yeah. So not quite,
Big Mandy fan.
Not quite Vampire's Kiss level of unhinged, or Face-Off level and unhinged. But, it does seem like it's a thrilling and exciting film, so... Con Air, indeed.
Somewhere between the 2 spectrums.
Oh, that is also completely and utterly unhinged.
Mildly unhinged from him until the end.
To be fair, Con Air is more reined in performance. It's just a ridiculous accent.
Yeah.
And a crazy hair.
Well, the whole movie...
Put the bunny back in the box. So, no, we're not... Well, I would also recommend Con Air. Con Air's a fun time, but that's not going to be one of our recommendations.
Can I recommend Mandy?
Well, you already have something down that you're going to recommend to everybody, Jess. So,
Shane makes me commit.
We all know what Jess is going to recommend the next time she's on the show. So good. So look forward to the new Bluey episodes coming out. I won't forget. You won't forget.
I thought you meant Mandy.
No, you won't.
Yeah, there's new Bluey episodes.
Jess will not forget about Bluey episodes, so she will remember for next time.
It's the wedding of the decade, Shane.
Indeed. For every single parent out there who love this show more than their kids. There you go. But the film that we're talking about this week is indeed Tobacco Road, which this film was actually believed to be the next big thing for Daryl Zanuck, the producer of this, who thought this would be on par with The Grapes of Wrath. Totally misguided, and there's multiple instances where this 1941 film from John Ford had to cut out a bunch of stuff because they were afraid that it would get banned from being able to be played in theaters. So this is based off of a 1932 novel, which also was turned into a Broadway play, apparently. But this film was... They were so worried about this film getting shut down that they did not shoot this on location in Georgia like intended. They shot it on a closed set. So, there was a lot going on, and they did not promote the film because they also thought that it would get pulled before it opened in theaters. Wow. So basically, they sent this out to... I guess with the portrayal of people and how much backlash they thought they would get from this film.
I don't really get it.
Well, we didn't see the things they cut out of it either, so
that's true.
I can only imagine. I guess we need to read the book to find out. But, Jess, what were your general thoughts on Tobacco Road?
You summed it up pretty well. I thought that it was Hillbilly Elegy-esque in that it was kind of patronizing. I don't know. For the thing that it was going for, I see why they thought it might have been the Grapes of Wrath, but like it was just like silly. I was expecting like a slide whistle half the time. It's like, everybody's living in abject poverty.
Well, that's the only connection, is that like this is dealing with the same kind of poverty in the Great Depression, like the Grapes of Wrath was, but this was like Georgian...
Good old Jenner.
Backwoods Georgian hillbillies. And, like, everybody is playing up the, oh, gee willikers, we're a bunch of hillbillies!
What was up with a guy named Dude Boy?
His name was Dude Boy, with a giant space in his teeth. And also the biggest heel turn since, Dominic Mysterio.
Could not wait for him to get knocked out.
You know what's crazy for all you wrestling fans out there? Dude Boy is very much like Dom Mysterio, and he found his mommy, too. In Bessie, who
was weird.
Who is the singing hillbilly throughout this film.
Not even the time for the ink to dry on the page, and he was like, I'm evil now, guys.
So,
I'll touch my car.
So, some of the highlights of this film that just scream this was unabashedly, like, pointing and laughing at hillbilly people is one when they one of the characters rolls up in the Clampett mobile, except worse. That is like tires are falling off and just like this thing is.
He's like, I got one good tire, and then it blows.
And he's like, well, anyway, and just drive off. And looks like this thing is gonna blow up at any given moment.
I also love that guy in the beginning is just like laying in the front of his house. They're like, oh, this house. I'm thinking like, bro, you could like, I don't know, sweep or something. He's just like, this is just abject poverty.
He just lying up against a column, like his whole entire time in this old mansion. It looked like the mansion right out of Gone with the Wind.
I'm sure that's what they were going for. I did roll my eyes at they built this mansion by hand. I'm like, They didn't. They didn't build this mansion.
Not the white people. The white people did not buy it.
They did not touch on that at all. They were just like, and then everything got poor. I'm thinking like, what happened? What happened that they suddenly lost all that labor? What
For once, John Ford didn't want to bring up the South.
There was zero blackface in this. That is one in the plus column for this film.
Was there a black person in it?
No, it cancels each other out, but the bar is low.
At least there were no black characters for them to have blackface for, but also meant that they completely ignored all black people in the South in this time period, which was a choice, but this wasn't about poor black people, it was about poor white people. And,
making it okay for us to laugh at them.
Basically, it's that kind of narrative where it's like, you got a week to get this money, you gotta get your $100 for rent for the year. And I'm like...
What was up with them? He was selling wood?
$100.
Yeah.
$100 for rent for a whole year.
How much is that now?
We'll have to look at the inflation calculator later, but it's less than $10 a month of rent. Let's just put it that way.
He's a humble, dry wood farmer.
Which, like, Charles Lawton, Henry Fonda, and a whole bunch of other people were, like, steered away from this film.
I was going to say, Henry Fonda was in this?
Well, he was considered for the lead at one point before John Ford took on the film. And obviously it didn't work out, which I'm sure a bunch of actors did not want to touch the story with a 10-foot pole.
The lead, like, the old guy?
Yes.
Oh,
so,
okay.
You did.
How old was he supposed
there
to
was a Ward Bond sighting, though.
Oh, yeah.
Which, his character was crazy. Like, he's like, oh, I didn't do much to her, I just tied her up a little.
Oh,
and
he was love or whatever.
I'm just like, what?
I love the part where they almost kill a man over some turnips.
Yes.
And then apparently God is punishing them the rest of the film for
yes.
some turnips.
Almost kill a man over turnips.
But
we just love.
He could have shared though.
I just love turnips.
Turnips. Yeah, and then there was a whole argument about winter turnips versus summer turnips, and they're like, where do you get summer turnips?
This
like,
movie was an hour and 20 minutes and decided to spend all of this time talking about turnips.
I mean, I learned a little bit. I didn't know there were summer and winter turnips.
So,
how far removed we are.
Before I get into, like, the actual strong pieces of the film, I do have to, like, that were, like, dramatic, I do have to say, so Dude Boy's heel turn, so, like, basically, they go to get married, and the person at the courthouse is like, boy, you should marry somebody your own age, and she sings gospel, and they all start singing gospel, and they're like, yup, and they just approve the marriage.
I love the part where she's like, you're way too old, how old are you? 39?
Yep.
Love that.
Well, maybe.
Also, she looks like she's in her 60s.
Dude Boyd might be like 17 or something.
Yeah,
so.
we can't. He's 20. They do say it at one point. Because I remember thinking, like, oh, okay, sure.
She is like twice his age, but whatever. That's the least of this movie's worries.
There's like two women in this whole film. I think that you should probably
and one of them was
a
sister.
Yeah, like,
which was Jean Turney, who's like this drop-dead gorgeous old Hollywood actress who's frummed up to be a hillbilly.
I love
and
that
just
Love was like, Love, he was not interested at all. She's like, yeah, doing that like whole thing. And then I probably did that a little too well. And he's like, oh, there's a hideous goblin. She's the only one with like all her teeth and everything. It's like, oh, be gone, thought.
And then they go to buy a car, and she sings away and gets the car. And then Dude Boy turns into a heel, and it was just like, no, if my wife's going to give any money to anybody, it's going to be her husband.
And I love the part where she's like, I hope this isn't more than $800. And of course the guy is like salivating. The salesman's like, oh yes, we have some in your budget. Thinking like, oh my god, they're just playing up this stupid hillbilly trope.
Yep, really bad.
Hey.
And what's crazy is this is not towards the bottom of my John Ford films, but we'll get there. But we'll get there.
The bottom's pretty far.
I had to bring up, so Dude Boy's building up this like horrible heat throughout this whole entire movie of like hatred towards him.
You can't even look at his car
and
fight you.
Ward Bond shows up One Punch Man style and just
that was great.
Decks him off the road.
He tries to pick a fight with
and
him.
Then flips his car into the side of the road. I'm just like, I wanted to like get up and give a standing ovation.
He's like a human jack. He like gets under the car and just like stands up and flips right on there. I'm like,
that punch was vicious.
Dude, he punched the crap.
Got him.
We don't see Dude Boy the rest of the movie, do we?
No, he punched his soul out.
He might have killed him, yeah.
Punched his soul right out of his body.
He might have killed him.
But this film does like get away from all the silly hillbilly stuff to have a couple of moments where our main character is having some like serious contemplations, him and his wife. There's some tender moments. The moments with him trying to negotiate with like the banker and stuff like that. There's actual drama here that horribly imbalanced with the ridiculous silliness of the rest of the movie. But on top of that, this is a really well shot film, and the last couple of shots of this film are just gorgeous. And I'm like, this is why you get John Ford, but why'd John Ford waste his time making a movie like this? And then I think about all the other 40-something John Ford films that I've watched so far and thought, yep, he does indeed make silly crap like this. And this just, you know,
it's 100 floors better.
He won Best Director for Grapes of Wrath. Both his films from 1940, The Grapes of Wrath and The Long Voyage Home, were nominated for Best Picture. And he's like, you know what? Time to have some fun.
Nice power
cleanser. This is his last film, second to last film before he goes off to war. And because he had one more film, and then he started making documentaries, including a sex hygiene one for soldiers, and then a bunch of like battle documentaries. Which those will be some interesting conversations that are a lot less fun than talking about these hillbillies, which this film has absolutely no respect for. This film never feels like it's a tough line to be authentic, or at least you think you're being authentic, and trying to portray people that are less intelligent and less well off.
Abject poverty.
And trying to create empathy. How do you do that? The Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah. Tell their story. Give them depth.
There's one shot, this beautiful, beautiful shot of just the wind blowing dust off of their abandoned front porch, and I'm just like, you even made the comment, like, this one shot did more for the themes of this movie than the whole hour and 18 minutes probably leading up to that point.
I have my moments. It's true, though. More of this. Show us. Don't tell us. Don't make me point and laugh at this porch.
So there were some moments where this does stand out a bit, but in general, it is just silly for the most part.
They're irredeemable, too. Like, there's no one that's really good in this movie.
A lot of them do a lot of bad things. Obviously, we talked a lot about Dude Boy.
I guess his wife, who just kind of is there.
Yeah, like the matriarch of this family is the only one that kind of like, she's like the anchor of the film, and it's just, this was so disrespectful in such a cliche, crazy kind of way, and it's just so unhinged until like the very end, where it's like this beautifully shot, moving film of this family walking off looking for new pastures when their house is taken away, and just trying to survive. And you're just like, wow, there was some intelligence, heart, and like powerful filmmaking here. It only took an hour and 20 minutes of the hour and 24 minutes that this movie was. Jess, do you have any other thoughts on Tobacco Road?
No, I think that.
So, like I mentioned, so Paige will be returning to the show for back-to-back episodes with John Ford's next film and his last film before he goes off to war. And then I will be having basically a month and a half of documentaries coming your way. So shaking things up here on Welcome to the Wasteland. But before we wrap up this show, we do have one last section, which is our recommendations. And Jess has a YouTube channel to recommend to you.
A big fan of Oceanliner, one-word designs. It's your friend Mike Brady. I think that's how he introduces all of us. I just think it's interesting. I'm like, he's Australian, and you would love it. Shane, he wears a vest. I think in a lot of it, I might be imagining that, but he often is wearing a vest. Anyway, I like ocean liners for some reason. That's been my latest fixation. But it's interesting, and he does the illustrations, I believe, which is pretty neat, the technical illustrations for a lot of ocean liners.
That's pretty cool.
So it's neat. Yeah, some depressing videos, like the Empress of Ireland ones. That one is pretty depressing. I think he does one on the SS Atlantic, too, which is depressing.
So are there videos about shipwrecks?
They're not 300 years old. It's generally within the last 200 years. But yes, Shane, there are many videos about
Jess
shipwrecks.
does love watching videos about shipwrecks.
How dare you, sir?
So
out me as a shipwreck enthusiast.
So my recommendations. So the new film that I saw that I want to recommend, I did not think I would be recommending this movie to like everybody that I've been talking to, but The First Omen might just be the best horror film of this year so far, up there with like Late Night with the Devil. This film leans into some like prequel kinds of cliches and a little too much echoing of the original Omen. But like this movie, Arkasha Stevenson directed the hell out of this. This film is terrifying. I was just sitting, writing, and listening to the score, and the score is unnerving, which is from the same composer of The Lighthouse and The Witch. So like, this has vibe, and Nell Tiger-Free is going to be one of the best actresses. Give it a couple years, she's going to be up there, because between Servant and the performance she gives in this is absolutely incredible. This will inevitably be another woman performing in a horror film, giving an amazing performance that any award ceremony will completely ignore because it's a horror movie. And this was like the imagery in this is shocking and unnerving, and almost got an NC-17 rating for showing a vagina.
Oh my god.
So like, yes,
Vulgar.
all the gore, and it like at one point seeing the back of their head split open is fine, but not a vagina. You can't show that. Does it have a demon claw coming out of it? Sure, but like it's still a vagina. But you know,
show like the slice of the ass. That's how you gotta do it, and you just gotta imply it.
There was a lot of creative editing that they did in that scene, I am sure, to try to avoid getting an NC-17 rating. But it was great. Honestly, people should go out. If you're a horror fan and you don't check out The First Omen, you're seriously missing out. It has this wonderful old 70s horror movie kind of vibe. Really works. From the watch list is Alice in Wonderland from 1915, which will be the next episode of the Cinematic Wasteland with Luke and Adam. So
some good costumes in that.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
Animal costumes, which they spend like a good 10 minutes of this 53-minute movie just scene to scene introducing different people in different animal costumes.
If I built those costumes, that would have been part of my demands.
And unfortunately, the caucus race that they're all assembling for is lost. So, like, that piece of the film's not in it. But, you know, we did get the Avengers Assemble of humans in animal costumes made in 1915. So, the dodo, that was an intricate costume.
Yeah, I was impressed by that.
So, like, from a technical standpoint, it's definitely worth watching. If you love film history, this is definitely one to check out. It's on YouTube. The intact version that they have is like 53 minutes. It does miss a couple of scenes and stuff like that. But it is a pretty good adaptation. Like, it's a fuller one than some other ones that I've seen from earlier. It even had it had the walrus and the mock turtle. Like, they actually had the mock turtle costume, and I'm like, what? So it was a very interesting film. And one of my rewatches, I watched quite a few movies I absolutely love recently, but one that I feel like probably not enough people talk about, and is probably one of Guillermo del Toro's most underrated movies, is Blade 2. My God, I love Blade 2. Blade is great, the first one. Has aged not so great because of the effects in the third act. But, like, this movie, which does have a little bit of, like, rubber band people, but, like, so does Black Panther. So, like, and that was made how many years later? The action in this is thrilling. The cast is ridiculous between Wesley Snipes and Chris Christopherson.
A lot of people.
And, like, Norman Reedus and Ron Perlman, of course, is in it because it's a Guillermo del Toro movie. And you have, like, Donnie Yen, who I think I've watched this film probably 6-7 times at least up to this point, and never once realized that was Donnie Yen. He doesn't have much to do in this movie, to be perfectly honest, except look cool and fight cool.
It's him, though.
Has such an awesome vibe. That mix of, like, that gothic, like, techno feel from the first movie mixed with, like, Guillermo del Toro gothic feel was really well done. And the whole entire idea of Novak, the new hybrid, new super vampire strain, which 100% set up The Strain, the show that Guillermo del Toro made, it was really cool. So honestly, you should go check out Blade 2. Especially, you could probably watch Blade 2 once a year for the next 20 years before we finally get this MCU Blade movie at the rate that it's going. So we got to enjoy the 2 Blade movies that exist that are worth watching, because one of them is not, and we're not going to utter its name because you should only watch the first 2 Blade movies from that trilogy. But anyway, that's a wrap here on Welcome to the Wasteland. Jess, thank you as always for coming on and being such a wonderful guest on all of my shows.
Oh, thank you.
And thank all of you out.
I mean, you're welcome.
True. But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.